Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Future Bites. I'm your host, Gabriele Corcos. We are in New York City, Penn Plaza, right above the Madison Square Garden, on stage 17 at the Hackensack Meridian Health stage in the Cumulus Media Studios. Future Bites is this strange cross between tech and food, where those two entities meet, what's happening, how is shaping the world of the things that we eat and the future. What's the future in the kitchen? How and what will you eat in the future? Today with me, today's ladies, so it's like being at home with my wife and two girls. So I feel very comfortable. Thank you so much for being here. We have Robyn Shapiro, co-founder of Sick Food, and Bertha Jimenez. You created Rise. So you both... we're talking about alternative proteins today. We're talking about alternative ingredients and how we can kind of like break a few barriers to start thinking about not just sustainability, but the fact, as far as I am concerned, that the overpopulation of this planet deserves ways to make life a little bit more sustainable. So we are not here to tell you that you need to ditch your steak. We're here to tell you that you need to ditch your $8 steak because that is... not sustainable ingredient. The good steak should be $60, $70. You have it once a month, once every other month. But for the most part, I do see the world taking a different direction. I see chefs and regular people more interested in alternative proteins. And I had crickets with you already. I made pasta with you. And actually, my recipe is going to be on your book. So, but I have to say something before I let you talk. Sorry. Years ago, I was in Houston, and I did have my first tacos with crickets. I consider that to be more of a Texan experiment, something that really was not bound to enter my life or to change my life in any way. Plus, I got a little sick from it, so I blamed the crickets right away, and I never came around it. Then I met you. And I have to say that when I met you, the resistance on the ingredient, at least on my part, was huge. I was very happy that you connected with one of my producers and you arrived on the show. But I'm a little bit of a prick when it comes to the food. I'm extremely judgmental. And there's nothing makes me more happy than have you here again, because I liked what I ate. And for the people that know me, everybody knows that I'm a carnivore. I like to make fun of vegans and vegetarians, with a good heart. Never too aggressive. But I am getting to the point where I am embracing this shift in culture. I do believe that is extremely interesting and bound to a degree to save the world. So I would like to start with you, Robyn. Oh, first of all, Robyn, why don't you introduce yourself and then we pass it to Miss Jimenez and then Miss Jimenez?
Jimenez.
Oh, okay, sorry. This is the battle of the accent here. Okay, so Robyn, tell me about your company.
Yeah, well, thank you for that introduction. And I guess I didn't realize that you went through such a transition from, resistance from a way that, not everyone has. Like you actually had a bad experience as opposed to people just saying being a little bit culturally adverse to eating crickets and other insects. You went from a bad experience to the whole sort of 180.
Well, it's not that the first time that you get drunk, it's like you never drunk, you're never going to drink again.
Good point.
Certain things are worth trying again, always.
Yeah, so my name is Robyn, as you've sort of introduced me. My company, Seek, we make different snacks and foods with cricket protein. So we started with making granola and energy bites, and really as a culinary-driven brand, we believe in having it all. We should have food that is really nutritious, really sustainable, but we shouldn't sacrifice taste and any of that.
What made you think about crickets? Did you do your research, or did you try different ingredients before landing on? Before you chose it as your protein, what was the process to get there for you?
Well, I've always been passionate about food, and I found myself in the center of Europe. I was living in Switzerland. I was put there for a job, and I was traveling very frequently between Switzerland, France, and Italy, the bordering countries. Like, this is food mecca of the world. I mean,
but no crickets, really.
But
Only at night.
it started from being in those places and really just understanding how sustainability was so closely intertwined with food. It was just really baked into the culture there in a way that we didn't have back here in America.
Well, that is actually a conversation that we end up touching on many episodes, and it always comes around, is the fact that here in America, we are in the land of the everything. We like having everything accessible. That generates a little, an incredible footprint in terms of pollution, but also this idea that whatever you need is always accessible. In Europe, I grew up experiencing a deep connection with the land where you eat, where you live. So you go to the butcher, most likely you have seen that cow somewhere as you're driving around the fields. You go to the vegetable stand, you know where those vegetables are coming. Here in the United States, you have the 24/7 kind of supermarkets where that it's not that the perception is altered; it just doesn't exist. It's just a matter of convenience.
And you're eating all the cuts of the cow too.
Exactly. And this actually brings me to introduce you, Bertha, because that excessive consumption generates leftovers. Consumption in general generates leftovers, but there are people like you that are able, let's say you are, to me, Italians make wine, and with what is left with the grapes, they make grappa. Nothing gets lost. People here make beer, and then what do you do after? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Should I intro?
Yeah, a little bit.
So, hi, I'm Bertha Jimenez. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Rice, and we're the food tech startup that takes organic byproducts and converted into ingredients. And yeah, the first industry is beer. And it didn't start like us thinking about we will make beer into food, because our backgrounds, my team is mainly mechanical engineers, math, computer science, and somebody from business. So what was like driving us was like how we can make cities more, like how can we make cities better? We believe in this concept called industrial symbiosis. That means the byproduct of a company can become the raw material of another company.
Okay.
So we met when we were like doing our grad school, and then we start looking, okay, what's going on in the city that we're living, which is New York City. And there was already a lot of infrastructures for plastic, metal.
Right, recycling.
Yeah, recycling. But there was nothing, but there was like the forgotten waste, which was food waste. And then we were like started looking, okay, what is like a homogeneous source of food waste? And it came from the beer industry.
Something that is constant, where you know what to expect in terms of output. Because restaurants, you never know what to expect in their garbage, obviously.
So it was like the craft brewery was like New York City. It was growing, and it was just not New York City. It was like all the urban environments, not just in the United States, but everywhere. So then what happened is like we thought that we just like kind of like make a marketplace and exchange the byproducts, but then when we took the byproduct, which is a spent grain, which is just malted barley that has been boiled and crushed, we realized the materiality of this, like it spoils super quickly, like the texture is a little bit funky, and because we're not from the food industry, we start like just testing it. So actually at the beginning we make paper, we make soap, we make cosmetics, we make enzymes, name it. We ate it. We didn't die.
Oh gosh, that's good that you're still here for us.
Yes, I'm still here. We ate it for 2-3 months, and trying different things. And none of like I don't cook, I just like put like some stuff. So then we understood that the beauty of this particular material was that it has high nutrition and like high fiber, high protein, and low carbohydrates, and that also was like there was a lot of it. So we were like talking with the breweries, and they were telling us like most of the people in the cities, initially they were trying to give it to the farmers, but because they have to pay for tolls and they have to pay it,
they just decided to dispose it.
They dispose it. Like the best chance they compost it, but 80% they dispose it.
It's interesting because now here we have somebody that has found a food source that was unexpected and reinvented it or tooled on it. And then we have somebody like you, Robyn, that just found a different source altogether, but it's an alive source. And it's interesting to me because on one side you have the animal kingdom where all of a sudden that protein is readily available, but I also like the fact that there is that scaling down, biomass, if you want to call it, of products that are being used, but they do still have that opportunity to provide some, how do you call it, nutrients.
Yes.
Do you see that the nutrients, though, let's talk about nutrients, about the difference between your product, the kind of, so let me finish first. You make flour out of that, right?
Yes, because we're engineers.
Okay.
What was better for us was to create a process and create an ingredient where then like the experts, like the chef, like the food manufacturers, like the bakers, they can so we create like the canvas and then you experiment with it.
That's kind of like what you're doing, Robyn, with the crickets. How do you make, how does cricket flour comes around?
Yeah, and crickets really are an ancient food. They're the first food that we've been eating. So it's new here in Western countries and here in the U.S., but it's something that is currently consumed at so many different nations from around the world. So insects are consumed in over 80% of the world's nations. So over 2 billion people right now are eating insects as a form of their diet.
What are their favorite insects, do you know?
Crickets specifically are popular in places like Mexico, parts of Africa, parts of Asia. And I personally have experimented eating a lot of different insects, but crickets, there is a supply chain developed for them. There's awareness growing for them, and they don't have such a sort of cultural aversion.
Why do you think they were selected rather than any other bug? Really, because of their nutrients, or because it's easier to raise them, or? You say raise crickets or grow crickets?
Yeah, farm them. Yeah, to farm them.
That's kind of like more of a neutral name.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, a few of the reasons that I said, given that there is a supply chain there, that they are easier to farm. So just like I'm an entrepreneur doing this, a lot of the farmers out there are as well. And they are sort of really nutritious.
So what's the process? So you raise the crickets?
Yeah, so the crickets are raised, and I'm working with farmers who are raising them, farmers from around the world. Right now, our crickets are coming from a farm in Texas and a farm in Mexico.
Okay.
And so, the farmers raise them. They have about a 6-week lifespan, and then they are sort of dried and then milled up into a powder form. It's a very sort of...
Is it a job that you do, or they do it for you?
They do it for me, and it's a very sort of minimally...
it's just a mechanical process. It is not, flushing, washing, all that kind of stuff.
No, it's really straightforward, and I've done it at home myself.
I mean, probably some washing before you grind them. But,
yeah, of course. Yeah, they should go through a little rinse. But yeah, then it is a very sort of simplified process, and that's how we believe in eating, and we believe in eating from the earth, eating foods that we've been eating, since humankind's been around. And actually, something interesting is our body is actually engineered to eat insects. So we have 5 dormant genes that are in us.
Yeah, we're nice omnivores. We can eat basically everything.
For breaking down the exoskeleton, though, that we don't use anymore because we're not breaking down the exoskeleton when we're eating. Okay. But we have, we're sort of engineered.
We did.
Yes,
at some
we did.
point,
we did.
In evolution. When do you think that was over?
Well, it's still going on today.
I mean, people that have these ingredients in the diet for sure are still using those enzymes. Yeah. They're clearly able to digest them properly.
And you mentioned sort of, flours and what we're doing together.
Yes,
I think it's exciting to tell people what we're doing. So because we've always wanted to work closer with chefs and bakers, the one responsible for cooking delicious food, what we've heard over the years is that they wanted to kind of take our products a step further and work more with crickets. So we're launching a line of baking flours.
Fantastic.
So an all-purpose one, a gluten-free one, a paleo one, and then just a pure cricket powder. And chefs like you and chefs from around the nation and a few international ones as well.
So you have obviously
a recipe to a cookbook.
What is the percentage of cricket flour in the flour itself?
So it differs. Obviously, we have one that's a 100% pure powder. So it's 100%.
What do you do with that?
So, for instance,
cricket muffins.
You asked how long that it's been here for. So one of the contributing chefs is a guy named Sean Sherman, the Sui chef. amazingly talented chef looking to raise awareness about indigenous foods here in America and really all down through Central America too. So when I said to Sean, I said, hey, which flour do you want to use? And he's like, we wouldn't use any of your flours. That's not what we used as part of indigenous cuisine. So he used just the protein. He actually mixed it with a masa flour and made this insanely delicious bison tamale that also has some like sort of squash, and it's so we just shot the sort of first recipes for the cookbook. I need to show you your recipe, which we shot. Yeah, your pasta.
This is a matter of culture, right? There is that kind of barrier that you have to break when you're introducing ingredients that are really not something that you see in books. I'm like, telling my kids that I ate cricket flour because they do know the cricket. They were like, oh, no. And I'm like, trust me, like, one day I'll make you try it.
Did they ever have it?
No, not yet. But I made fresh bread with the flour you gave me.
Oh, good.
And I didn't tell them. I told them it was whole wheat. And they made sandwiches and nobody died and
Did
everybody
you ever
happy.
Tell them? They still don't know today?
No, they still don't know.
Get your kids on the show.
I should, yeah.
A big reveal.
Try them, yeah. One day I will. When it comes to your product, what is after you get the process? The thing that is interesting to me is that you do know what to expect because you work with certain kind of breweries. How does it change it when a brewery makes a different kind of beer? What is the expectations that you have out of the product?
Sure. So an interesting thing about beer, and I wasn't a beer drinker before, but now I know more about it, and I even know which beer I like the most, is that, so beer is like you put malted barley, you boil it like it's a tea, then the tea, it's later on the wort that's fermented, the hops and everything else, but this like extra, mash, that's what we take. So all the beers, 85% of them, it doesn't matter if it's a porter or it's like a pilsner, they're all the same because most of the flavors are put afterwards.
Okay.
And so 85% is like the base malt, it's a two-row base malt.
Right.
And the 15%, that's where like they put like more roasted. So that's when it's more roasted.
They blend the hops and all that kind of stuff.
No, the hops is later.
Oh, okay.
So we don't deal with the hops.
Okay.
We deal with
just the first stage. Okay.
Just the first stage.
Okay.
So that's why, like, when, like, the ale one, the light one, which is from IPAs, ales, and pilsners, we know how to mix them to have a light line. So it's like a nutty, almondy flavor profile. Well, the dark ones, it's like from porters and stouts, and it doesn't matter who is brewing. We just like it's a matter of understanding the grain build. So it's a lot of data that we have collected in order to build on a specific recipe to produce a dark flour.
How do you introduce it to the public though? Like, what is the best way to make them understand?
Sure. So that's why we started like working initially just with people from the food industry because we knew that there was going to be a big education piece, and we're not like even from marketing, so we were like, okay, let's work with the people that already know. So actually the first person that we talked was a baker, and I think you're talking with him, with Peter Endres from Runner and Stone, and we just like went with like a Ziploc of a flour in Ziploc, and we brought him some cookies, and I said like, okay, don't look how they look because they're horrible. I made it. Just try it and tell me what you think. And he's like, oh, I really like the flavor. So to make the process, actually, we were like talking with him, and he was like telling us, guys, reduce the particle size. Oh, no, like last time it has more aroma. So he was the one that was giving us feedback from like how the flour should be. And then so from the brewers, we learned all about like,
the ingredients itself and then what to do with it.
And from Peter also we learned how to refine the flour to make a flavor profile that will be nice for other people. So when we talk with the people like bakers, chef, or food manufacturers, it's more about like telling them like the characteristics, the features, because they already know. And then we also like tell them like, for instance, like if it's a bit of it acts a little bit like a rye flour. So if you want to make a brownie, you can use 100%. If you want to make a bread, we recommend you to use up to 40%.
Not necessarily, talking about the marketing aspect, but if you wanted to convince me to use it, what would be the strongest point, your selling point?
So actually, it depends who we talk. There are people that are interested in local.
Mm-hmm.
So all the breweries that we're working, we collect it from breweries in Queens and Brooklyn.
Okay.
And then we move this material less than a couple miles, and we do it with our proprietary technology.
Okay.
So like if you're interested in how local it is, it's super local, it's super sustainable. If you're interested in the nutrition, this compares to the normal flour, 2 times the fiber, 12 times the fiber, 2 times the protein, and 1/3 of the carbs.
It's a very rich one. Okay.
Yes. And if you're interested in flavors, it does has like really interesting flavor
Absolutely.
profile. So
And you still have to mix it though with traditional flour to give it some volume.
depends what you want to do. Like as I said, like if a banana bread, something that doesn't need like a structural integrity, you can use 100% of like a 1-1 replacement. If you want to make like something like a bread or like something that has a bit more, you know, like a croissant, you
Right.
know, then you have to mix
Well,
it.
given that the grains have been already boiled, once you make the flour, how do you levitate it? How do you rise them? Isn't it easier to do it with regular flour?
Yeah, that's
by
why
adding
like
that?
that's why you will have. We recommend like a bread mixed up to 30-40% of ours,
Okay.
and the other 60% all-purpose flour.
I imagine for the both of you there has to be a little bit of a learning curve in terms of like learning how to place your product on the market. It is not just the intent of doing something that is good for this planet, but you got to pay your bills and live as well while you do that. What are the hurdles or how do you get certified? How do you bring a product like this? You know, you come up with the idea, you refine your product, and in both instances is an exceptional product. People reception and people perception about it is one thing, but what about the bodies that govern your ability to distribute it and sell it? So any certification isn't necessary, or did you have to have your mix analyzed by anybody before you put it into commerce? And what are the biggest hurdles to get into commerce?
Yeah, so I mean, we have had to do testing, but that testing isn't unique to our brand. It's
Okay.
just for any food brand. So
Absolutely.
we sort of do different, pH testing to sort of make sure, water levels are below a certain point, to talk about shelf life. All of our products are gluten-free. So sort of that's, verified. In terms of, and maybe if this is what you were getting at, in terms of, what is the sort of regulatory stance on crickets, because that is such a new ingredient.
Yes.
We do fall under the USDA.
Okay.
And, they have, we've been sort of in conversations. I say we as like an industry, we have a sort of nonprofit governing body.
Absolutely.
Around increasing our consumption of crickets. And they've said as long as this is sort of intended as food, intended for sort of human consumption, then
Well,
this
I
is
would
okay to
assume
be
that the
marketed.
farms that you're buying from are already to a degree certified to.
Yeah, it's
give
a weird
that
sort
ingredient
of
to you,
gray
right?
area answer that we're getting from them. And this is specific to the U.S. In Europe, actually, things work a little bit differently.
Okay.
And different countries are taking a little bit longer to sort of, certify this as food. And
Have you encountered any problems so far, or it has been somewhat of a streamlined process for you from inception to packaging and making it available?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely loads of challenges.
Oh, well,
But in terms of this category, what we're speaking of, this, there hasn't been any major hurdles here.
Okay.
Other ones though, but not here.
And Bertha, what for you?
So similar as Robyn said, like from the beginning, because we even like when we started like making a lot of like we were like super research oriented. So we started testing with labs. Like we have like tests of everything: pathogens, allergens, nutritional profile. There's really like nothing about this particular thing because it's new. So, but what we do is like we control everything from the moment. So it comes out of a boiler. We put it to food grade beans, and then we bring it to our facility.
Okay.
So we're like doing like even like more that will normally be asked.
Well, given that the product has been
Because-
boiled already, so
Yes.
that there is a certain kind of safety that comes with that.
Yeah,
Then
and
obviously,
and it's in a safe, like it's in a boiler, so it's like a food grade system.
Yeah.
So that's what we have been. We haven't had a problem yet with the certifications, but we are always like reading it, informing us, making more tests. Like every time, we just got a grant from NYU to do more testing. So it's something
what's people's perception about your product?
in New York City, people are very open because they find fascinated. We just got an article last Monday from New York Times.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you. So actually, our sales has like gone super high.
Oh, look at that! You're almost blushing. Oh, that's too cute.
So it has been like going super high, like like so it's like it seems like it's like something that everybody appreciates. And we also have like a lot of interest from people from Europe saying like, hey, we have like this brewery, can you help us install a system that can and also like
I almost see breweries being able to develop an extra product because given that they do have it, you can do your own, but you also can consult and help them.
Yeah. And that's our idea also, because like we're just one small startup.
Well, plus it depends. If you really think of yourself more as an engineer,
Yes.
You're really providing a solution more for them than for the general public. Like you were able to tackle a problem, which was what to do with this kind of waste. If you don't want to be the one that does it for everybody and puts it in stores, you can surely go to every single brewery and implement all the research that you have done to allow them to, extend their offerings.
So actually, we tell the breweries, you are not in the beer industry, you are in the grain industry.
Yeah.
So like some people like do wanna like do their extra things, and because we're interested on industrial symbiosis per se, our process also work with other industries. So actually, we could also help the juice industry, like even the wine.
Well, wine for sure.
Wine, the distilleries, the sake, the soy milk. So anything that has a similar physical characteristics.
Are you saying that you're already working on other projects aside from this one?
Yes. Our process also work with others, and we're already experimenting with this.
Give me one example that to you is extremely exciting.
Well, I'm excited about like we're working also like with seeds from oil. So like the byproduct of seeds is like a cake.
Okay.
And it has really, really interesting like proteins. And also like another one is the juice, which it has like, it's very nice also for cosmetic applications.
How do you get the juice? Like
the juice pulp.
Oh, the juice pulp. Okay.
The juice pulp.
But how do you harvest that? You need to go through like places that make juices?
Yes.
Oh,
so we
gosh,
always
okay.
work with we don't do anything. Like we make
Right.
the people that have like already this waste, we take that.
So you basically created a chart of the kind of food waste, the kind of ingredients, and see what you could do with
Yes.
those different categories.
Yes.
What do you do with the pulp? Like cosmetics, you said? Creams?
You can do you can make like a skincare applications, but it's also good like even like for like an ingredient for your cake, to have flavor, to have like the vitamin C or whatever. So each one will have different characteristics in terms of nutrition and what we'll have. And we have like for instance, like we also work with a few big companies. So like they're interested on like the dry grain instead of the flour format. So we also have like the flour format and the previous format.
Okay.
So like depending who wants to act with, we give like these different formats. So and then like there's like basically it's food and skincare applications. Those are, like, the two.
That to me is incredibly interesting. One of the things that I think is obviously necessary is create the content that is digestible, so to speak, to people that are still not necessarily close to the subject. Robyn, where do you see us being more efficient? What is the ideal target to talk about these products? This is not about changing minds. This is about adding an offering and showing people how you can eat consciously and really have less impact on your planet because of the way that you eat. What is the best way to get to people's hearts and minds when it comes about these thoughts, and also you got to convince them that, cricket flour is good. I'm telling you, it is good. Like, I like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really does come down to change. Something that we've always been told is being challenged.
Yeah.
This isn't something that here in America people have grown up eating. So, it takes people a second to think about that, to do something different, and we want to make that process for them as easy and as joyful as possible. So that's why we think about everything that contributes to that. People are oftentimes calling out our package design and how that sort of sparks and resonates with them. And then this next evolution of the brand, and this is really inspired by Dan Barber and his book, The Third Plate, if you've read that, and is understanding how we can forge partnerships closer with chefs.
Absolutely.
You have a amazing sort of opportunity to influence how people eat from a nutrition and a sustainability standpoint, as well as you have your own unique perspective and history on it. So that's why this next evolution of the product is saying, hey, we can't do this alone. We need to do this in partnership with all the great chefs and bakers out there. So that's why we have brought together this really amazing all-star team. We have over 30 chefs who are all from around the country, the nation. We have chefs that are Mexican or Native American. I brought up Sean, or chefs focused on nutrition, chefs that are just, make everyday delicious food. The team from Van Leeuwen's is contributing an ice cream.
Oh, congrats. That's
we
fantastic.
have, Michael Anthony from the Gramercy Tavern, who, is sort of at this really sort of, upper echelon of food. And he's going to be contributing a recipe. And together, this collective story should hopefully instill, trust and excitement with people.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also at this really interesting time because people have heard about it. So we have awareness at a really high point. And now it's just about bridging that gap because people haven't had access to it. People have heard about cricket protein, but haven't had access to it.
I think, sometimes this came to mind because I was talking to my kid today yesterday actually, about you and about the episode that I was about to record. And because she has seen the package of your flour at home, and because we have met and worked already together, she kind of like gets it. But she keeps on resisting. She keeps on saying, I will never do that. And ultimately, I think that aside from the education factor, you just need to find people that are really hungry. Because I hate to say it, but, I told my girl, like, you're, a lucky white girl that never got hungry. You've never been really hungry in your life. That kind of hungry that brings you to over the garbage can. That kind of like, I'm about to pass out, or give me whatever there is. And that conversation wouldn't happen if you felt that way. I get the goosebumps when I think about it, because in my life, I probably ate out of a garbage twice, and I was camping. So it's not that my life depended on it, but I do know what does it mean. I cannot function anymore. I am at the end.
Totally. Yeah, there's a much larger picture here of global sustainability and sort of the implications on that level as populations are rising. As our reliance on meat and actually increase in meat consumption just isn't sustainable. The math doesn't work out from sort of land usage, not to mention the fact that meat has contributed to the leading cause of death in America, cardiovascular disease.
And the pollution, the CO2 pollution, methane pollution.
Yeah, crickets don't release, any sort of, greenhouse gases, or maybe a very tiny amount as compared to meats. One of we're working with a few different nonprofits. We're a member of 1% for the Planet, and one of them is a amazing nonprofit called Farms to Orphans, and they actually are working on increasing insect consumption in orphanages across Africa.
Wow.
Because malnutrition is a major issue in these orphanages. The food that they're receiving is little to no food / stuff that isn't nutrient dense.
We live in New York City, and 1 kid in 4 kids goes to bed hungry. It's New York City. We think we have it all. It's New York fucking City, and we are on top of the world. One of the things that I always say is that, we don't talk about it because it's hidden, because you don't see it, because the crying hungry kid is not in front of your face where you feel compelled to act upon it. And the same goes for as far as my experience with meat. I grew up in Tuscany. I always knew where my meat came from. When I moved to California, all of a sudden, I did not have farms around. I did not have land around. it took me a drive from Los Angeles to San Francisco on the I-5 and spend, what is that, 250 miles of brown manure and cows rolling in mud because they're just eating grains. There's no trees, there's no grass. Those are the steaks that you find at your regular 24/7 store. But then if you drive back from San Francisco to Los Angeles and you want to do the scenic route, then you are, by the coast. There are the pastures. There's fewer cows, but those are the $60 steaks. And that, I think, in my life, and it happened about 10 years ago, the moment in which I was like, there's something wrong in the way that I consume my meat. I have to abandon completely. Cheap meat is not sustainable. Cheap meat should not exist, does not exist.
Many different foods out there, you're not going to have it be cheap without major sacrifices.
Exactly.
We know that from cheap meat. And that is one of the benefits of crickets. Cricket operations can be scaled up so that as the industry grows, prices will come down without sacrificing that quality.
And for you too, Bertha,
really
right? Like you can scale up and find... not just the breweries, but, when you really think about the byproduct of the industries, there are like infinite numbers.
Yeah.
I hate calling it garbage. But it's leftovers. It's stuff that nobody else wants.
Yeah, food waste is a major issue.
Yeah, actually, let's just think about the beer. There's 42 million tons in the world that's sent to the landfill. That's, if we transform that to food, that's the whole population of South America, where I'm from, that you can feed.
That's insane.
And it's just one of the industries, So that's the thing. Like we also currently we're doing pretty manual, but we know how to scale it. It's just we're raising fundings in order to scaling, and then we can really go down with the price.
Right.
So it's and also when we're thinking about
when do you think that will happen? Not for you business-wise, but when do you think that
what the problem is? The problem is that people think here in the United States, it's different in every country, but people think agriculture and agricultural equipment should be out of the city.
Right.
Actually, if we have access to agricultural equipment in the city, it will be really fast because that's the type of equipment that we're needing. So even to have access to a mill. You cannot have access to a meal easily.
I think that life is changing. 2 decades ago, when the farm that I grew up started losing workforce because the sons and the daughters of the farmers decided that they wanted to go to university and better their lives in a sense, stop working the land and have more opportunities to a degree. We all ran to the city. The city became the core of being functional. A lot of people together generate a lot of ideas. It's a better place for everybody to thrive, business-wise, emotion-wise. But at the same time, now it has become a luxury to be able to get out of the city, unplug from the chaos and reconnect to really where you come from. In general, as a human being, as your place in the world.
Yeah, but manufacturing should be back to the cities. Manufacturing shouldn't be something that should be far away. Manufacturing is the backbone.
I do understand, but how do you tell New Yorkers that they need to build a factory in Manhattan? You know what I mean? A lot of cities. I give you an example, like Florence, the city where I grew up. It's a city where you just cannot do anything. It's an historical center.
Yeah.
It's really hard to bring. There was a reason. You can bring manufacturing inside the city. That is true, but then you need the tolls and highways to move trucks in and out. There is so much that happens.
Yeah, but there's something for instance, it doesn't have to be heavy manufacturing. So, for instance, actually, New York City is giving incentives. So, we are looking to move towards the Brooklyn Army Terminal.
Mm-hmm.
So. Even moving this, you can use smaller equipments. You don't need to have the bigger equipments, but you can have you don't need to exactly replicate what is outside.
Right, absolutely.
So you can adapt it. And there's I think there's place in the city. It's just that people sometimes it's hard to think about it, and that's why New York City actually is giving incentives to make it seem so instead of this. For instance, the byproduct of this travel up to 600 miles.
Wow.
we don't have landfills anymore, you know? It can travel 6 miles, you know? And like, that's the way you can like.
Well, and then if you're able to implement something like that directly inside the brewery, then you do it like on the spot. And then from there, you use the same routes and the same
depending on
distribution that they would use.
Yes. Well, depends on the kind of brewery. It's like, it's a super small one, but like it's a big one. Yes, you can do it actually inside the brewery.
Absolutely.
And, like, then they are in the grain business. They are not in the beer business.
That is true. We are at the end of our episodes. I would like, first of all, to thank you so much, but I would like some closing remarks. So, hopes and challenges in for yourself, but also for the industry in general. What you would like to see happen, the kind of change that you hope for, and the obstacles that you see in front of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was talking with one of my investors recently, and he was just saying, Robyn, this is something that is going to take time, but it's going to happen. And I need you to do everything you can to stick with this. And I said, I feel a responsibility to humanity for this. And I fear for a world where not only with what I'm doing with crickets, but I think what you're doing is tremendous, tackling food waste. I'm scared for a world without initiatives like this. And crickets pose an incredible opportunity. They're the most sustainable type of food, the most nutritious and abundant. They grow on their own. They're not even a byproduct. They're right there. So I think my challenge is just to continue to, pay close attention to the market, to our customers, to perceptions, and just to stay with it.
You go, girl.
Thanks.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
I really love your product, and I am sure you'll be successful. And for you, Bertha, hopes and challenges for what you're doing or your industry in general?
Sure. So one of the hopes is the good things we are seeing is that, for instance, we are working with big food manufacturers, and they are looking for upcycling ingredients. So it's great that they are interested more about sustainability and nutrition, and less about just bringing not good food to the people.
Right.
So that's great. A challenge is for instance, some of them, they want to have a ton per month. We don't have that capacity. So it's manufacturing, as I say, that's a challenge to how you can produce more, because it's already there, you know.
It's funny because you create a demand, and demand is already above what you can produce.
Yeah.
It's almost like a catch-22, but the good thing is that at least it's happening, right?
Yes.
The feedback is good. Well, ladies, you're a force. I'm really happy that the future of my kids and next generations lies on your shoulders to a degree.
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure whatsoever. Go ahead, push hard to change the world for us, make it a better place for everybody. Best of luck. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on Future Bites with us. From Stage 17 at Cumulus Media, we say goodbye until the next episode of Future Bites. I'm Gabriele Corcos, and Robyn and Bertha, thank you so much again. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.